Welcome to our Miami Film Festival Gems Q&A for Sound of Metal. I'm joined by the film's writer and director, Darius Marder. Darius, can you tell us a little bit about what planted the idea for this film in your head?
Well, the film actually began, it was interesting. I was hanging out with my friend Darius in France yesterday, and we were talking about how we discussed this film. We discussed this film together 13 years ago.
Wow.
And it began with a hybrid documentary that Derek was working on that I got kind of obsessed with. And Derek, by the way, we wrote Place Beyond the Pines together. So we're kind of creative partners in a lot of ways. And that I was editing that film for a while, this hybrid documentary, and I loved it. It allowed me to kind of experiment with sound and picture in a way that was really helpful for the inspiration process.
Mhm.
And then I decided I really wanted to write this. I wanted to write it and kind of build it from the ground up. And so Derek and I had this incredible like coming together where he basically said, all right, I have this baby. I'm putting this baby up for adoption. Are you going to take care of this baby? No, he said he was going to trust me to take care of his baby. And I had some very interesting personal things that brought me to it that I can explain later. But that's where it started. It started a long time ago in 2007, and you know, it really was this labor of love from that time until now.
Yeah. Well, so much of this film is about how we experience sound, and it does such an incredible job immersing us into Ruben's situation. I mean, it's really like nothing I've ever seen. Can you talk about the sound design you utilized to really kind of help with that effect?
There's an irony to doing this on Zoom, talking about sound
I
design.
know.
The sound, yeah, I really wanted to do something that people haven't experienced before in cinema, and that's a very kind of audacious thing to say. And I said it all along as I was creating this, and part of that goes back to that early stage where I was able to kind of experiment with this idea a little bit in a very lo-fi way. So sound design is obviously such a huge character in this movie, and I was recently counting up the weeks that we actually put just into the mix of this film. Was about 23 weeks of
Wow.
just mixing. Um, it was an extraordinary process, but actually it started years before that when I met this wonderful sound designer, Nicolas Becker, who's a French sound designer, kind of a sound artist, and he and I met a couple years before I began shooting. And I traveled to Paris. We started experimenting, like miking the inside of skulls and underwater, and really trying to explore the limits of sound perspective. I'm starting to call it POH, which is, you know, instead of POV, you
Uh-huh.
know, the point of hearing. And
POH.
this whole idea was to, and it really took an extraordinarily in-depth process that's hard to even begin to describe, because it began with this experimentation period. Then it merged into the shooting of the film. And Nicolas came to set, and we always had concurrent mic setups running from different angles and vantage points so that we could experience our sound in different and interesting ways. And then it moved into the post process, which actually began in picture editing, because you can't properly edit this picture
Oh my God.
without editing the sound. So it's this interesting, you know,
There's a lot
chicken
of
and an
layers
egg.
to it.
There's a lot of layers to it, but it was wonderful. It was such a wonderful creative process in a way that I can't imagine ever having in the same way, because it's such a specific thing.
It's so specific and it works so well. And that's like
Thank
kind of
you.
leads into my next question. You know, I imagine there's a lot that goes into filming or to playing a role with about someone who can't hear when you aren't hearing impaired. Can you tell me about how you and Riz like work together to kind of immerse him into his character situation for him to really have that understanding?
You know, my philosophy with direction is, in general, as often as possible, it's best not to pretend. We created these earpieces that enabled, they emitted a white noise that I was actually able to control on my phone. So I was able to control it, and this was an incredible thing that Riz allowed me to, you know, allowed for this process of losing control. And I think in general, when actors and when performances become next level, they're about that relinquishing of control.
Hmm.
Um, and so you asked about this kind of natural process. What we did is we actually created that process as best we
Hmm.
could. That doesn't mean that you're really creating it, but deaf people hear their own voice. They hear the reverberations of their voice. It's not so much their voice, but they hear the vibration, the low frequency
Hmm.
vibration. So we tried to recreate that with technology, and and there are different stages of hearing loss in the movie, and so I shot the movie chronologically. I was able to modulate chronologically as he lost his hearing. I was able to um, create a high pitched whine in his ears with these things. And then that moved to a white noise that didn't allow him to hear his own voice. And when you can't hear your own voice, you lose equilibrium.
Yeah.
And so Riz really took to this, and the first time he put these things in and lost that connection to that control, he really like teared up, and it was deeply emotional. And that really infused that process with, I think, a very organic feeling.
Yeah, I mean, so that's my next question is like Riz Ahmed and Olivia Cook are so incredible in this film, and they're really the heart and center of the film. Can you tell me what it was like, the casting process, and how you got them on board?
This was a very hard movie to cast, because what I was asking of actors is so scary for actors. It's
Hmm.
such a scary thing to ask of an actor. And to ask that of actors being a relatively untested director, this is my debut fiction film as a director. So I was really putting the bar right here and
Yeah.
asking actors, and in a way it was a litmus test for actors, because if even actors I loved, if they weren't up for that, it was really kind of, I would challenge actors to say, are you up for this process?
Hmm.
And Olivia, to speak about Olivia for a second, this is a really brave woman. Eh, Now, brave is always an interesting word. Brave doesn't mean not scared.
Right.
you know Brave mean, in fact, you have to be scared in order to be brave. And that's what creates such a special experience, is when someone's scared, and they know they're scared, but they're willing to step up. So an example of that is like the music in the movie. One thing I always wanted is for them, and I told them that you're going to really be playing this music, we're not going to cheat it.
Oh
When
wow,
in
I didn't know.
fact, yeah, in fact, I'm going to shoot it so that it can't be cheated. And if you were to watch that opening concert again, you'll see that I didn't shoot cutaways, and I didn't shoot
Mhm.
tight shots on fancy things happening that could be cheated with other actors. There's no way to cheat it. It's very clear that Riz is playing the drums. You can see it. It's a one shot. Olivia is playing guitar, singing, and working all the pedals at the same time.
Mhm. Wow.
That's really hard to do. Number one, screaming is hard. Just screaming,
Yeah.
allowing your body to do that. She's so badass. Olivia is so
Yeah.
badass. She was so scared, but she was so up for it. And I just think she's really next level that way. She's really next level, and she met every occasion that way. And Riz is, I think we all know, and we're all seeing a very, very special human
Yeah.
being in Riz, not just an actor, but a human being. And he really is that guy. Riz moved to Brooklyn 6, 7, 8 months before we shot, and started learning drums, and started getting his body into condition, and started learning sign language from the ground up. And he became some degree of fluent in sign language. He played that drum piece, which many very good drummers could barely get through. He's just extraordinary. He did something that very few actors were willing to do, and
Yeah. No, I mean, I think
he
he gives
just
one
had
of
the
the best
courage.
performances of the year. Really.
Boy, I sure hope you're not alone in that, because
I won't be.
I hope, and my heart is just filled with gratitude for what these actors put in, because when you write something, all you can ever hope is that someone is willing to fill that role. And
Yeah.
man, these guys just did that plus a million. They were so brave, and and really put their faith in me and the script and the movie and the process of not knowing. and going on this journey. And it's, Olivia's just mad at me because nobody can see her armpit hair that she grew. She's like, "Are you kidding me? I
She grew
grew
it out,
that.
no one could see it.
I grew that, and no one can see it." I was like, "But you knew it.
But
Knew
she
it."
knew it exactly. Well, that concludes our Q&A. But this has been so great. You made such an incredible film, and I can't wait for everyone to see it.
Well, thanks for showing it. It's a real
Yeah.
privilege, and I really appreciate it.